Janet,
to the camera.
Janet, hit record. It's recording.
Good morning. My name is Helena Ples Conley. I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Kappa Lambda Omega chapter. And we are here today to find out a little bit more about Nashville General Hospital Foundation. So we'll be speaking with Ms. Vernon Rose, who is the executive director. So I would like to give my president of Kappa Lambda Omega chapter an opportunity to say a few words.
Good morning, and thank you, Vernon, for taking this time to meet with us. Up under Target 2, Women's Health and Wellness, we really are focusing on diseases, illness that affect African American women most so, and even the African American culture. So we know at Nashville General, you guys do an awesome job of reaching out to the community and doing extra things other than just what you do in the hospital. You're still out there in the community doing things. And it's right along with what Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and Kappa Lambda Omega do. We want to reach the whole community, not just when you're sick, but we really want to keep you healthy before we had to see you in that space. So even like healthy meals. So this new target that we've had, this is the third year of it, is even also focusing on eating healthy. So I think I look at me and my family during this pandemic, we have been trying to focus a little bit more on eating healthy. But we're excited to have this time with you this morning.
Well, thank you for having me. So I'm just delighted to have you. And I love the intersection between our mission and y'all's. I mean, you can't pick something more perfect. So the foundation itself, we're a separate organization from the hospital. And what we do is support the patients, their families, our staff, and then our neighborhood. So with, specific services. So today we're going to talk about some of those services. So I know Helena's got questions for me, so we can jump in. Helena, when you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready. The first question I'd like to ask is, what in the food pharmacy? I mean, tell me a little bit about the food pharmacy difference between the food pantry.
Sure. So Nashville, like many communities, let me start with Nashville has 4 identified food deserts. So a food desert, and there's 4 of them in Davidson County, which is a lot. And that basically means that the residents within those areas don't have access to healthy foods. As Deidre would say, is how do we support people? It's not just food, it's healthy food. So we start with that premise. And then we looked at the population that we serve. So I'm talking about, we literally took zip codes and said, who do we serve and where are they? No surprise. So this is, if you can see my hand, this is the food desert that's in Davidson County, looks about like this. And the people that we serve look just like this. So there's a huge overlap. So no surprise, and y'all have already identified it through your own work, that when you're talking about chronic disease, especially diabetes and hypertension, you are talking about the effects of a long-term situation of poor healthy eating. So y'all have nailed it. You've already been doing this work for a number of years. So let me say thank you and congratulations. So when we started the food pharmacy and what that is versus a food pantry. So we started with our oncology patients first. So kind of a little known fact about specifically oncology patients, especially if you're looking at oncology patients with hypertension and diabetes, knowing that 69% of our neighbors have at least hypertension and or diabetes. 16, I mean, that's crazy, but it tells us there's a lot of work to do. So when we took our oncology patients, the most vulnerable, you get sick and the first thing the doctor says to you is, we're going to take your weight and we're going to give you your chemotherapy based on your weight today. So don't lose weight. So you go, oh, this sounds great. I'm not going to lose weight. And then you get sick and then you get sicker and then you get sicker. and it becomes a huge challenge not to lose weight. So what difference does it make? Because your chemotherapy is based, let's say you weigh, 150 pounds, and that's what your chemo is based on. If you drop 30 pounds, then what you're getting in chemotherapy is too much for your weight, and you can experience toxicity. What that means is they have to stop your chemotherapy, stabilize you, and then start again. So the very thing you were there for, which is attacking on your cancer situation, has been put on hold. So the food pharmacy started with, we're going to address getting oncology patients, not just food, but the right food. And that was based on nutrition, because remember, you've got that layer of cancer and hypertension and very possibly or diabetes on top of that. So when we found that, and we had 2 years of that, and what we found is we did not have one patient with toxicity once we started the food pharmacy, which it says a lot, not one patient. So we went, okay, because we know our population, our own population has that same situation, we're going to expand this. So we then did a collaboration with our case managers in the clinics and with inpatient and with emergency, saying, okay, we know that we've got these patients, hypertensive, diabetes. We're going to focus in, based on your diagnosis, we're going to give you food based on your diagnosis. So when we started this, a patient could walk into the food pharmacy at no cost, kind of like going to the grocery store, and go, I'll take the brown rice, I'm going to get the low sodium tomato sauce, I'm going to get the water packed tuna, I'm going to get the 1% shelf stable milk. And then there was this array, and it's a beautiful thing. If you look at our website, it's a cooler, like you see at the grocery store, red peppers, green peppers, carrots, red onions, very bright, deep colors, because that's where all the nutrients are in fresh produce. So they could go in and go, okay, I'm going to take this and start making a meal. That's where we started. So the difference between the food pharmacy and the food pantries, when you go to a food pantry, and I'm not knocking it, we are specifically focused on a diagnosis and providing nutritious foods for a diagnosis. A food pantry has a different role, and I'm not knocking it because it serves a huge need in our community. They deal with hunger. So they're going to get, for their dollar, they're going to get the most food that they can for that dollar to pass on to somebody at no cost. Does that make sense? Okay. So when we've moved during the pandemic from 1 in 10 households to now 1 in 6 households, just in 8 months, of people dealing with food insufficiency, you can see why that component of having food pantries is essential. But you can also see when 69% of our community is fighting hypertensive and diabetes, when we provide a food tote, everything in that food tote will satisfy that diagnosis. That's a long explanation to one question.
Well, I'm a nurse by background, so I understood everything everything that you were saying. I understood and can relate to it.
Thank you.
And I'm actually a 6-7 year survivor. So I don't know we talked about nutrition when I was going through treatment, but I guess I was eating good. I think the only thing I liked was liquids at that time. So I just really had to work on keeping my body hydrated.
Well, this is one of the council ladies from our area. And when we were showing the food pharmacy, and so we're talking about a highly educated woman, and her mom, also highly educated. Her mom got diagnosed with cancer. First thing the doctor says is, don't lose weight. They looked at each other and went, we can do this. We know how to do this. And she said her mother got sicker and sicker and lost all this weight and had all kind of trouble. So it's not a matter of intelligence. It's a question of getting the right instruction. And that's health literacy, which we hopefully might get to talk about.
Did I freeze up? Did you guys freeze up?
Okay, so we did get a lot of information from that question. So I'll go to the next question, and that is, how did it get started? How did all of this get started? I know you maybe touched a little bit with the first question, but if you could elaborate a little more.
Absolutely. So when we started with the oncology patients, that population, over a period of a year, we might address maybe 1,000 people. And we felt like we could do more, and we knew there were funds in the community to support more than that. So as I noted, we then first started with doing, again, totally the inpatients, the ED patients, and clinic patients with the diagnosis. But when the tornado hit last spring, and it was all kind of just coincidental when that hit, and then if you remember, kind of the closing up of the church, all these churches had all this food and everything to help people, and you could go to a church, and then it was like, not even weeks later, the churches had to close. COVID hit, it was March, and they said, okay, you can't go to the church. So there was food and stuff in the churches, but nobody could get to it. So long story short is Reverend Enoch Fuzz is on our board, and we were talking, and I was saying, I've got this food, but we had shut down our clinics because of COVID. So I had food on the shelves. He had people literally knocking on his door going, we don't have food, help. And he calls me and I go, I've got stuff on the shelves. I don't have a way to get it out of here. So that created the outreach program. And I said, well, okay, somebody's got to deliver this because we can't have all these people coming up to our loading dock. That's crazy. So he was able to go to the Metro Police Department and their community outreach officers from May 1st all the way through the end of May. They would come every day, 5 days a week, and get all these bags off our loading dock and deliver them. And we were getting names, y'all, from pastors like Fuzz, community workers. We had social workers at schools, like behind me is Churchwell. They were sending us names, and so we were getting names of people that did not have food. The high-rise senior citizens places, people without food. And how does all that happen is, Miss Jones might live in a high-rise and her friend might live down the street. But when COVID hit, they were not going to the grocery store. Miss Jones was certainly not getting in anybody's car. So she became isolated overnight. Her access to food was completely shut off. So we went from doing, I would say, off the top of my head, maybe 500, 300, 500 patients a month to literally thousands in a month. So in the total of 2020, we delivered more than almost 13,000 totes it had fresh produce, and everything in a tote is appropriate for somebody who's hypertensive and or diabetic, because we didn't know the diagnoses outside of the people that were receiving, but because we know the general diagnosis of our community, we had no business becoming a food pantry. We had to stay with our standards and stay as a food pharmacy.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to mention that this all came about with the donation where I had a person in the chapter that contacted me, and that was Peggy Ernest, and she had received some concerns about North Nashville really not getting the food and stuff that they need. So that's when I contacted you to try to get this donation earmarked for North Nashville because they were hit so hard by the COVID as well as the hurricane that came through.
Absolutely.
So that's how that came about. But I'll get back on the questions. And the second question is, what impact has the food pantry and food pharmacy outreach program made in 2020?
Well, so I mentioned, so those food totes I was talking to you about, so I didn't say every food tote has at least 5 days of food in it, okay, for an individual. So we distributed more than 200,000 meals during 2020. So one is we're providing food to people that need food. But two is where you want to be ultimately is it make a difference? So can I give you a quick story? Is that okay? Okay, I'll give you two quick stories. One is a clinic patient and the other is a patient in the community. So the patient in the community didn't start as being a patient. We got contacted by a local church and said, Miss Mary and her mother, Miss Mary had a job, lost it because of COVID. And again, that's not unusual, unfortunately. So their resources, and her mother is in failing health. So she's at home with her mom, doesn't have any resources. They said, can y'all get something to her today? And so we got somebody in, we got their food totes put together, that we made a special delivery that afternoon. And, when and we have volunteers that now deliver all of our food totes. So the volunteers, so, it's a distance thing. We put it on the doorstep and then we back away. She was home, opened, and she goes, I don't know what we were going to do, because she said, I don't have any food in this house. So imagine yourself, and that's what keeps me going, knowing that there's somebody out there, and there are people right now that are opening a refrigerator and a cupboard, and heavens to Betsy, there's nothing there. And we want to reach those people. Another real quick story. Had a lady who had food, well-meaning person, so I don't want to knock the person, delivered to a lady that's over here off John Merritt. She gave her a half pallet of beanie weenies, the little cans, green, that's hot dogs, but if you've ever looked at those cans, the sodium content in a can of beanie weenies is nobody should eat it. I don't want to knock product, but it's not something anybody should eat. That's all she had. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, she ate beanie weenies, and she was a patient of ours, and no surprise, came in through the emergency room and ended up in a bed upstairs because her hypertensive, she was hypertensive patient. So let me give you, we can do better than this. We can do better than this. So Diane and John, and I wish I could get them on this call. Oh my gosh. So they moved here from Ohio, and Diane is probably, I would say maybe 5'4", a little plump, biggest smile of, I love Diane. And then John is probably 6'4" and probably doesn't weigh 125. I mean, just a string bean if there ever was, and they're awesome together. They're banter and so forth. And she started feeling worse and worse and worse. And finally ended up in our emergency room. Didn't have insurance, didn't know where to go, came here. And she got immediately diagnosed, which she did not know that she had diabetes, had no idea she had diabetes. So, and the difference of being at Nashville General and any other place in our city, if you get a diagnosis like that, we will immediately put you into our clinics, insurance or not. And so she ended up with a caseworker, and that's when they found John, because Diane came to get diagnosed, but John's situation, he couldn't keep weight on. So, and she couldn't get weight off, and it was making her sick. So they came in and went through the program, started in the food pharmacy, and John's awesome. He goes, now I am your poster person for how food pharmacy works. He said, I'd never read a food label before. And this great story about when I asked Diane, I was down there one day and talking to them. I said, so, because they just had gotten a bag of dried beans into their food tote. And I said, so I'm sorry, I've got construction in the background if y'all are hearing that noise. So I said, so how do you fix your white beans and your beans? And she goes, well, I used to like my grandmother, fat back, salt, whatever. And she goes, but then she turned around and remember I told you about this case with all these vegetables and things in it. So she turned around and pointed, she goes, everything that's in there, the red peppers and the carrots and everything, in the red onion, she goes, all of that goes into my chili now. And she goes, I make veggie chili. And then John, in the sweetest way, started fussing at me. He goes, you don't have any garlic. I don't know how you expect anybody to cook without garlic. So if you come now to our spot, so John's gained weight. She's lost 8 pounds. Her diabetes is under control, and we have garlic in the cooler. So it works. It works. If you can get people in there back to understanding, what is it I need to do? How do I read a food label? What's the difference between me taking this can of beans and me taking a pack of dried beans? And if I don't know how to cook it, are you going to teach me? That's what we're doing.
Great, fantastic stories. I love those stories. They kind of touch, they should touch everyone in some way because they're about human beings and their situations. But can you give me a number count of how many people, if you can, during 2020 that this program did reach out to?
Okay, so we give me a second. Not like literally, but I can do a quick in my head calculation. So we delivered almost 13,000 bags. We had some repeat, but we were doing a count of what that would look like. And so a couple of things I can tell you. So between the deliveries, what we found was our focus was senior adults that were living alone and families that had more than 5 people in their household. So that was kind of when I looked at who, that's what we were finding. So from a standpoint of who are they? And it was North Nashville, Antioch, and Madison. That's where we were going. There might be some, and you might find a pocket when you drive over the river, so if you go over the river and you're over on, First, Second Streets, if that makes sense, we had group over there. Bordeaux, we're doing all that. Okay, so we think we were at somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 individual households, if that makes sense. So we did do repeat. We do repeat now. We don't automatically do repeat because when you're dealing with food insufficiency, people's circumstances change. Like the lady that didn't have a job does now. So does she need as much as she did? No. But if she called and said, I got to have milk for my mom or whatever she says, we're going to do it. Okay. So, and then like it's like from Churchwell, they'll send us names of families, where they know that both parents have lost their jobs. And that's been kind of the challenge also of the pandemic. And we see it on the news a lot, is that we've got children with no food because they used to get it at school. So we're trying to make sure that's not happening.
Well, that leads right into the next question, and that is how can people make referrals to the food pharmacy and the outreach program?
Okay, this will take a pencil on your listeners. So I'm going to give them 30 seconds or whatever it might take while I go blah, blah, blah to find a pencil because it's real easy. There's an email, and so you're going to email this information, the name of the recipient or the household person, a working phone number, a delivery address with a zip code, please, and how many people are in the household. And that information gets emailed to food, FOOD, at NashvilleHA.org, O-R-G. Food at NashvilleHA.org. If they send and go, here's a family, I know they need it, and it doesn't have to be a family, if you know several families, that's how the majority of people are reaching us. And then they get on the list, and that's a one-time delivery. We don't, again, if they need it again, somebody needs to tell us. We don't presume, but that's how we do it.
Great. Okay. So, and the next one would be, and I think you touched on this a little bit. You talked about the tote, but where do the supplies for the food for the tote come from? I know you touched on the pharmacy and the food. So.
Thank you. So we purchase food in two places. So let me focus first on the produce. We don't get produce from food banks because generally, and I'm again not knocking it, but their sources are more likely to be like it's set somewhere and somebody can't use it. So it's not what I'd call fresh. It might not be, I'm not saying it's bad food, but when we're dealing with the people that we're dealing with, we want it to be the freshest it can be. So because thank goodness we're a hospital that feeds people, patients, staff, we have, a full dietary department here. We can buy the fresh produce wholesale. That's a saving grace for us. So when Mike does our buying, so what he's buying, so when he buys salad, for the salad line, he's also buying, carrots and red onions and those dense, nutrient-rich produce for our food pharmacy. So that's where that comes from, and it comes every week. So when you're getting a bag from us with produce, produce, it is fresh and usable. Because, it's 5 days worth of food. I don't want to give you anything that in 2 days is no good to eat. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
it would be if you went to the grocery store Monday, you could still use what you bought Monday, on Friday. That's what we're trying to do. The shelf stable product, which is rice and pasta and low sodium vegetables and shelf stable milk and whatever that might be, we're buying that from Second Harvest Food Bank.
Okay.
Okay. So, well, in the thank goodness for them, because they get it at cents on the dollar. I am able to buy it on cents on the dollar, but I'm still buying it. So the foundation, which is me, what I do is I raise money I have to put it in a bag, so I have to buy a bag. And because a food tote, I want to tell you, it easily weighs 30 to 40 pounds. So it's not like you're going to put this in a little, ratty plastic sack. You got to get something substantial. So we're buying the bags, we're buying the food, we're buying the produce. Volunteers assemble those totes, and volunteers deliver those totes. If somebody comes into the food pantry, like so they're in, they went to the clinic, they got a diagnosis, they come down, they get the same bag, but they can choose their food. And that's the only difference between the two, but the selection is the same.
Okay, sounds good. And how can people volunteer? We have individuals in our chapter that would like to personally reach out and volunteer. How do they go about doing that?
So
Yeah,
there's
we
two
can't really
ways.
gather right now, so the thing is,
No,
like,
I mean,
still providing that
I said-
opportunity. No, I just want to tell her, like, we
Okay.
still want to, we
Oh,
want to,
yeah.
we can't gather, but we can do things individually. And we want to know what those opportunities are. So this is a great time for you to share those opportunities with us.
So,
Thanks.
right now, the main thing that volunteers are doing for us right now is, and everybody's mask, I want to be clear about that. So, and this has all been signed off by our chief medical officer. So, okay. So we have people that will actually come in twice a week, which is Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they will help us get the food. So the food gets delivered by Second Harvest. It's got to come off a pallet and onto a shelf. So we have volunteers that do that. And then we have volunteers that come in after that. And if we generally do about 80 bags per delivery slot. So that means somebody's got to come. As we have volunteers that literally will come in, and once it's on a shelf, systematically build those bags. Okay. And then the shelf stable stuff goes first, obviously. And then the last minute, the things come out of the cooler for the produce. So that's volunteer driven. And then the other volunteers come to the dock. So they just get out of their car, open a trunk or their hatchback or whatever it is, and they'll be given a list of, and depending on where they're going, could be 5 bags or it could be 20 bags. But if it's 20, you're going to the door of a high rise. You're not going to, if you go to a high rise, you're not going in the building, if that makes sense. You're going to somebody's doorstep. So you get the bags, you're given a list, it's got addresses, and you deliver. So that's what volunteers do right now for us, because we're trying to, they can't come in physically here and interact with anybody. Okay. To do that, there's 2 ways, as I said. One is you can go back to the same email address, food@nashvilleha.org, and in the subject line, I want to volunteer, and then they put their information, email address, phone number, and so food deliveries are midday Wednesdays and Fridays. Unpacking and packing is on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that's generally in the afternoon. The other way is you can go to our website. Okay, another pencil time, which is, and so our organization was Nashville General Hospital Foundation. That's our name. Our website is NASH, so shortened, NASH, Gen, GEN, Foundation, the whole thing, .org. If you go there, there's a tab at the top that says volunteer, and you can click on that, and you give the same information of when you're available and so forth. So either way is fine. And you'd be working with Kate Haygood, and Kate contacts you and puts you into a schedule, and we go from there. And thank you. Anybody wants to, thank you.
That's a great opportunity, because I was thinking about, like, we have a partnership with Home Mission Haven, That's a high rise.
Mhm.
So if we wanted to partner with you to do that for that
Yes.
assisted living facility, what would we have to submit their name?
If
And then
you,
we
yeah.
go ahead.
So,
How could we make that partnership work?
so let's say there's 50 people living there, okay?
Mhm, mhm,
And you work with the housing manager there,
mhm.
and that person says, okay, out of the 50 folks, I know 35 have needs. And
Okay.
is it generally we'll do people every other week,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
But she'll say, this is the needs. And then we'd like to get the names once, only because when I raise money, I have to prove that I didn't eat it at my own dinner
That's,
table.
I understand. That's right. That's right.
What
We
did,
don't want no issues.
what did you do with that food? So I can say,
Yeah.
we went to this high rise, we got the list once, and then other than that, we're going to deliver 20 bags every other week or whatever it is that y'all
Okay.
think we
Okay.
need. So yes, and it's just a matter of come in, we load however many cars that is with whatever. And then
Okay.
what we recommend is that if y'all are going there, you don't go any farther than their front door. And that their
Yeah.
housing manager, or they may have folks in the building or however they want to work that,
Mhm.
we're going here, and that's it. And then we back away. We have masks, we back away. Okay. But what we don't want is people walking in the building, getting on an elevator and going up to the 5th floor and putting it at a door. Okay. Be safe.
And
Right.
yeah, and that's kind of the process we've been using. We've just been dropping it off right there, pretty much, I would say, in the lobby, not going any further, and
Yeah.
kind of
Perfect.
naming the individual, kind of labeling the bags for them and things like that. So we're on the same lines when it comes to
Great.
that.
Awesome. So yes, please.
Yeah. I see an opportunity to collaborate. That's what it's
Yes,
all
I love
about. I'm
it.
excited.
That's great.
Okay, we have, so now let me kind of bring this to a conclusion here. For the food pharmacy is actually for people that come to Nashville General and that need that nutritional food for their diagnosis.
Yes.
Versus the outreach program is pretty much what you were kind of talking about a few minutes ago. And they would be delivering to people in the community with that need for food. Is that,
Absolutely. But
that's
you've
correct?
nailed it, except that what we're delivering in the community, again, anybody, so if somebody has hypertension and receives that food bag, everything in that food bag they can use, or diabetes. Okay. So
Okay.
the layer is, we're not giving you a food pantry food bag out in the community. We are giving you a food pharmacy food bag out in the community.
Okay, so actually the food pharmacy is for the hospital and patients that come down, and actually that food pharmacy is incorporated into your outreach program as well.
You got it.
Okay. Well, it was just one more thing that I wanted to mention, and that was the health literacy card insert
Thank
that you
you.
actually put in the bag.
This is so, and back to, remember you asked me earlier, how do we know this works? So I'm going to start. So the foundation hosted a health literacy forum, and y'all should join the next one. It'll be in the spring, in October. We had organizations, we had 50, 60 something organizations join. So let me start with, what is health literacy? So health literacy is an individual's ability to take and understand information about their own health and act on it. Okay. And while low literacy does drive low health literacy, this will be the surprise for y'all. 88% of the United States population, 88% is health illiterate. And so you're going, wait a minute, how can that be? I'm a smart person. And so when I first read that, I went, oh, wait a minute, I'm college educated. I can read a form, but I'm going to give you why I found out I was not. Are you okay for a quick story? Okay. So what I found was, and so I found Vernon is health illiterate in a number of ways. So here's a quick one. So when my doctor says to me, you've got this cold or whatever it is you've got this deep cough. I used to get bronchitis. Okay, we need you to take a teaspoon of whatever heck this stuff is every 3 hours. Okay, So my head goes, okay, teaspoon, okay, I get it. Health literate, I get the 3 hours, I know what I'm supposed to do. Okay, with food, without food, got it covered. I'm smart. Go to my kitchen drawer. I don't know if it's like y'all are too young. My kitchen drawer, if I go to my kitchen drawer, I'm not kidding you, because I've had over my life, different sets of, kitchen silverware, I got 4 different size teaspoons in my kitchen drawer. I'm not kidding you. I got 4. So if I pull them all out and look at them, I mean, they go from now through standards, somewhat small to pretty big. And I thought, okay, so which of these is a teaspoon? And that what I found out was the answer was none of them.
None of them are.
Thank you. The nurse speaks. None of them are. But in my head, and this, I'm not kidding you, is my head goes, I live, my husband's dead. I live alone. So I'm like, okay, so what difference does it make? Heck, I'll just take the darn bottle and take a swig because I don't want to mess with food. I'm lazy. And what I found was I was over medicating myself. And it matters. When the doctor said take a teaspoon and the manufacturer said this is what a teaspoon will do, and I'm taking a teaspoon and a half to heaven knows what, that's health illiteracy. And I call it on myself. But people
I'm thinking as a kid, we always did that. I probably didn't even start. I love when Tylenol, when I had my kids, they had the little plastic cup so you could know exactly what you were giving. But I remember back in the day when you got sick, your mama, she sure did. She poured it right there in the spoon you ate your soup with. That was considered a teaspoon, So and you can't do any better than what you know. When you learn better, you do better. But at the time, I'm right there with you. So
my mother has that same soup spoon. I still got one in my drawer. But that's health illiteracy. And so really quick, and I know this will be longer than y'all want it to be. So I have his permission to use his name, so I don't feel like I'm telling stories out of school, because I'm not. So on my board is Reverend Enoch Fuss, who, if you've been reading the newspaper, got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer last spring. And you're talking about, again, well-read man, intelligent, can deliver a sermon like nobody's business, but cancer is a whole different kettle of fish. And he goes, Vernon, here I am. And he said, I get this range of pills. He said, and he does this hand motion. He goes, I got all these pills now. And he said, every single one is unpronounceable. And I don't know what they're for. And, he said, so he says, I feel lousy. You want me to do all this stuff. You want me to interpret, is this for pain, or is this, my chemo? He said, that's when I knew I was health illiterate, because I could not sort through this myriad of instructions to do what I needed to do to get myself well. And so sometimes it's not an ongoing thing. Sometimes it's situational. So that's a long 2 stories to tell you what we're focused on.
Well, we enjoyed them both. And we talked about how the chapter, individuals in the chapter can get involved. But now the very last question, and I've enjoyed every question that you've answered, is that how does the community, if we wanted to let the community know how they can get involved?
So a couple of ways. One is I'm the blatant, I'm not afraid to ask, we need money to support the food totes. I need volunteers to support the delivery. And so when we do the health literacy forum this spring, and if I can send, an email invitation to the 2 of y'all, and if you will spread it, the critical thing about health literacy, because it affects almost everybody that we know, is that we got to do a better job. So we're going to be putting messages that are easy to read in every food tote that we're doing in perpetuity. And it'll be about nutrition and how to take medications, and questions that you ask the pharmacist, or questions you got to ask your doctor. But it's not enough for me to say that, because we're in the middle of this pandemic, and we got here, one, because there was misinformation, there was disinformation, and no way around it. Understanding COVID-19 is a complex health issue. You just can't get around it. It is. And so we've got to be sure that people understand, if I take the vaccine, why am I doing it? If I do it, what does that mean? If I take it, what happens to me? If I don't take it, what happens to me? All of these questions all have to do with literacy. and health literacy. And it's going to take every one of us, every group, every organized group in this community to go, we're going to make a pledge to understand it and make sure that the information we've got is the right information. And we're going to make sure that those that need to know get the information. And if we can do that as an entire community, and it's not just about COVID-19 or the pandemic, it's about medications and nutrition and food deserts, then we're all going to be healthier.
Great outreach program, great program all the way around. And now I would let Deidre Woods, if you'd like to close out with anything.
And thank y'all.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for taking the opportunity to, I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 15 years. I don't do bedside anymore. I do more of the IT, electronic health record side of it, but just worth the knowledge. Like I'm thinking about me, like knowing measurements, I understood exactly where you're coming from. You was talking about the chemo and the weight base and all of that. And then just going back to my childhood, taking a teaspoon is not a teaspoon, just bringing it so real and just understanding how we can work together in this space to educate everyone in the community, not just brown people, but everyone. This hunger affects everyone. The face of hunger does not look just like you. It affects everyone. Yep. And like I said, and the more we can do to get the word about this little hidden secret, it can make an impact on the world. So thank you.
Thank you. God bless y'all.
Oh, God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Janet.
I don't know where she went, but I'm gonna see if I can get her to stop recording.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll probably have to edit some of that because I know I was going.
Then I was like, am I frozen?
Okay, well, it's still recording us, though.
But I'm going to tell you, I am so glad I had this interview because I knew there was an impact there, but I didn't know the details. And it is really, it's in depth. It really is. I mean, this is creative minds to come up with how to assist people in doing this.
I think the easiest thing,
like how even in the midst of a pandemic, you're still providing and meeting that need.
Right.
Well, thank y'all. I think the easiest thing to do is on the bottom in the corner, there's a leave button. I would say hit the leave button.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will.
I can't get her attention.
You're fine. We're used to Zoom.
Okay. Have a great day.
Have a blessed day. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.